My CEO humiliated me for being just a janitor. So after I won the lottery, I anonymously bought our office building and became his new landlord. Could you be any slower? Mr. Sterling's voice, sharp and dripping with condescension, cut through the quiet hum of the empty office. He stood over me, his $1,000 shoes mere inches from my worn-out work boots. I was mopping up a coffee spill he'd made, a careless flick of his wrist that sent a dark splash across the gleaming marble floor. Some people are trying to run a multi-million-dollar corporation here, and we can't have the help dawdling. He didn't even look at me. He spoke to the air above my head as if I were a piece of furniture. His entourage of junior executives snickered, their sycophantic laughter echoing in the cavernous lobby. I just clenched my jaw, my knuckles white on the mop handle, and continued to clean. Just a janitor, he'd once scoffed during a board meeting, loud enough for everyone to hear, easily replaced. For 10 years, that was my life. Invisible, disposable, and constantly reminded of my place. I wasn't always a janitor. I used to have a life, a family, a small contracting business I built with my own 2 hands. Then my wife got sick. The medical bills piled up like a tidal wave, sweeping away our savings, our home, everything. After she passed, I was a broken man with nothing left. This janitorial job was all I could get, a lifeline that barely kept my head above water. Sterling knew my story. He didn't care. To him, my tragedy was just another detail that made me pathetic. Then, one Tuesday, everything changed. On a whim, I'd spent $2, my last $2 until payday, on a lottery ticket. I didn't even check the numbers until the next morning. When I did, I thought it was a mistake. I checked again and again. The numbers swam before my eyes, a beautiful, impossible sequence. $125 million. I felt the air leave my lungs in a silent whoop of disbelief. My first instinct was to march into Sterling's office, throw my mop at his smug face, and quit in a blaze of glory. But then, a better idea, a slower, more delicious idea, began to take shape. Revenge, I realized, is a dish best served cold, and with a legally binding lease agreement. I found out through public records that the 20-story glass tower that housed Sterling's company was owned by a real estate firm on the verge of bankruptcy. They were desperate to sell. I hired a team of the best lawyers and financial advisors money could buy. We created a shell corporation, a faceless entity with a generic name. Through this anonymous front, we made an offer on the building, a generous all-cash offer they couldn't possibly refuse. The deal was closed in less than a month. I was now officially Mr. Sterling's landlord. I let him sweat for a few weeks. I sent out a series of memos through my new property management company, announcing new ownership and upcoming policy changes. Sterling, who prided himself on knowing every powerful person in the city, was furious that he couldn't figure out who had bought the building out from under him. The memos got more and more specific. The executive parking garage would now be reserved for essential building personnel. The top floor corner office, his office, would need to be vacated for structural renovations. His corporate perks were being systematically dismantled, and he was powerless to stop it. The day of our meeting, I made sure to dress the part, not in a fancy suit, but in my old clean janitor's uniform. I waited in his office, the one I had cleaned on my hands and knees 1,000 times. When he stormed in, ready to berate the new property manager, he stopped dead in his tracks. He stared at me, his face a kaleidoscope of confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. "You?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I gave him a slow, satisfied smile. "Hello, Mr. Sterling. I believe you've met the help." I walked over to his massive oak desk and ran my hand over the polished surface. "Nice desk. It's going to have to go. It clashes with the new color scheme I'm planning." His face turned a shade of purple I'd never seen before. "This is impossible. You're a janitor." "I was a janitor," I corrected him gently. "Now I'm your landlord, and as my tenant, I need to discuss a few things with you. First, the rent is going up by a lot. Second, I've reviewed your lease, and I'm afraid your company's culture of disrespect violates the terms. We'll be starting eviction proceedings immediately." I paused, letting the words sink in. After all, we can't have the tenants dawdling. Some people are trying to run a multi-million-dollar corporation here. He just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, utterly and completely broken. It turned out he was right. I was just a janitor, and I had just cleaned house.